Passenger pigeons were once common across the state of Minnesota. How much do you know about them? Before we get started, let's test your knowledge with a few questions. First, how big was a passenger pigeon? Larger or smaller than a mourning dove? It was larger. A passenger pigeon typically weighed 9 to 12 ounces, while a mourning dove weighed 4 to 6 ounces. What is a squab? A baby pigeon or a pigeon courtship dance? It is a baby pigeon, generally less than 4 weeks old. How often did passenger pigeons migrate? In the fall and spring, or all the time? It was all the time. The pigeons were always looking for food, shelter, and nesting grounds. Finally, how fast could a passenger pigeon fly? 45 or 62 miles per hour? It was 62. The passenger pigeon was a strong flyer and could reach speeds up to 62 miles per hour. Let's take a look at the passenger pigeon's migration patterns in Minnesota. Clearly, pigeons did not winter in the state due to the cold temperatures. They wintered further south, where it was warmer. When spring arrived, passenger pigeons returned to the state, much like other birds. They would stay through the summer and then depart in the fall. In the fall of 1849, one early St. Paul resident stated the sky was obscured for over an hour from Dayton's Bluff to Fort Snelling. If you plot those points on a map, some are over 8 miles apart. That was a large flock. Their ultimate goal in the spring was reaching the wooded areas of Minnesota, which were filling in fast with farms. When the passenger pigeons found an area to settle down, they were called roosts. One roost near Cannon Falls was 1.5 miles in width and 3 to 4 miles in length. Each tree had 1 to 20 nests. The woods were alive with birds, and the noise was deafening. The nests were described as being as thick as blackberries in June. When roosting, some of the birds went out to feed in the morning and came back to their nests in the evening. The noise of the flocks was so loud that a gunshot could barely be heard. Passenger pigeons like to eat acorns, so the big woods of Minnesota were prime habitat. Pigeons were under constant hunting pressure. When they migrated, no matter what the time of day, sportsmen in the towns and cities along their paths shot at them, even if firing guns within the city limits was illegal. Their roosts were also targeted by hunters. The sounds of gunfire at the roosts sounded like a battle was raging. However, the birds paid little attention to it. One sportsman was seen on the streets of St. Paul with upwards of 200 pigeons strung across his saddle. Another hunter bagged 13 with a rifle out of 14 shots. This indiscriminate blasting could also be dangerous, as one hunter mistakenly shot a dog. To other people, these birds were an easy source of food. Even native Minnesotans killed passenger pigeons for food. Most people thought shooting the pigeons was a huge waste, as the bullet holes in the birds made them poor eating. Therefore, most would wait for the pigeons to lay their eggs and for the young to hatch. When they were a few weeks old and could not yet fly, they were called squabs. These young birds were very susceptible to predation. Towns would organize squabbing events where men, women, and children came together to gather up as many squabs as they could. Squabs were shaken from their nests or plucked from the trees. They could also be pushed out of their nests with long poles. Some farmers even used nets to capture the birds and offer them for sale in St. Paul. After the squabbing events ended, picnics were held to enjoy the fruits of their labors. Extra squabs were distributed free of charge in some communities. Since they were available in such large numbers, they could dominate the diet for days. One group of men prepared the pigeons every way they knew how, and rinsed them down with liquor. However, the end result of downing squabs, whiskey, and boiled eggs was like cowboys and beans, stinky. Was there any hope for protecting these unique birds? Back in those days, wheat was king in Minnesota. A glance through any local newspaper showed numerous ads related to the growing and harvesting of wheat. There were also ads for local mills, which turned the wheat into flour. Since the pigeons ate wheat seeds, just like blackbirds, they were the enemy of farmers. Guns and dogs were used to keep pigeons off the fields. Eventually, people in Minnesota became concerned about protecting harmless birds. However, some of the first game laws did not consider certain waterfowl or pigeons worth protecting. The last passenger pigeon was shot in 1901. By 1911, prizes were offered if people could find a pigeon. Finally, in 1914, the last pigeon died in captivity. That concludes the video. Please check out my websites at mnbricks.com and chaskabrick.com.